Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever this might find you in whatever time zone you might be, and welcome to the webinar, Essbase Reporting Tools, What's the Right One for Me? My name is Craig Messenring, and I represent HCG, Harbinger Consulting Group. We're a company based out of Minneapolis in Minnesota, and we provide consulting training and product sales in the business intelligence software area, specializing in the Oracle Hyperion EPM space. In the consulting area, we're a certified gold partner. In the training area, we're also an approved education center, both in Minneapolis here and in Phoenix, Arizona, and we can provide custom training, as we've done in many cases. We can provide training on site or over the internet, as we're doing here, and we have training videos also. And in the support and development area, we do installations, custom tailored applications, so forth and so on. But let's get to the topic today and the assumptions around that topic. I'm assuming you know a little something about Essbase. Well, here's a little something. Essbase is a multidimensional database for reporting and analysis. And that usually is reporting and analysis on financial data, but it can go far beyond that. If that made sense to you, great. If not, just hang with it. This also assumes that you know little or nothing about the Essbase reporting tools. And we're going to talk about three of them today. SmartView, which is the replacement for the older Essbase spreadsheet add-in, which some of you might be using. And then we'll talk about financial reporting and web analysis also. So I assume you want to see a little bit of each of these tools, and you want to know which is the best for you and why. So a few things that you might want to start with asking yourself or your audience is your audience, are they read-only viewers of data, or do they actually create the report? When they are creating their report, let's say, do they want to do it in a quick ad hoc fashion? Which tool might they prefer? If they're strictly Excel-based, then you want to go down the SmartView road. If they want to use a web-based tool, then you'll go down the web analysis road. And if they're application-based, if they like working with separate applications, then financial reporting is the tool. But that's a very minor point as to which you should choose. How about the output? Does it need to be highly formatted? In that case, then you want to look at financial reporting. Are dashboards required? Then in that case, you want to look at web analysis, although SmartView offers little in that area also. Does the data that you're retrieving and analyzing need to be viewed in Word and or PowerPoint? And if so, you want to go down the SmartView road because it integrates with Word and PowerPoint. And then how often are these reports distributed? If they're distributed across the enterprise on a regular basis, then you might want to think in terms of financial reporting reports. So the tools involved are SmartView, and it is the Excel-based add-in that you're going to use to report and analyze on your data. It gives you your familiar spreadsheet view of data, although it does offer some visual views of data that I'll show you in a little while. And I want to re-emphasize that it is the replacement for the older spreadsheet add-in that you might still be using. Web analysis is a web-based studio. Is that really that important? No, not particularly, but the most important point about web analysis is that it is better suited for a visual display of data and adding controls like radio option buttons, check boxes, drop-down lists, so forth quite easily for the creation of dashboards. Financial reporting is an application-based studio. Again, not all that important, but you're graphically designing and distributing production reports, annual reports, quarterly reports, something where the look of the report is quite important. And what's handy with financial reporting and its associated integration with what is called Workspace is that you can create multiple reports from one financial report based upon, once you're in Workspace, selecting multiple POV numbers from that one report, and then all of a sudden you have multiple reports from that one report. And do you want to distribute multiple reports to multiple destinations? Again, via Workspace, you can do that with financial reporting reports. But let's go through each one individually. What is SmartView? It is the universal interface, not only into Essbase, which is the topic of today, but you can also connect to financial management, HFM data, planning data, financial reporting data, so forth and so on. But you will always have a spreadsheet view of data unless you use something called the report designer, which I'll show you in a bit. And one of the keys with SmartView is that you can copy the data out of a SmartView report and paste it into Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, and that data that you paste into Word or PowerPoint is then live data, meaning if you were to close that Word document or PowerPoint presentation and open it 2 weeks later and the data has changed, all you'd have to do is press a refresh button in Word or PowerPoint and that data would get updated because it is live data, not just a static copy and paste as you would normally do with Excel and Word or PowerPoint. And once again, yes, it replaces the spreadsheet add-in. So here's an example of a SmartView report with one of the dimensions in the rows, the year dimension, zoomed in to the quarters, and another dimension, the measures dimension, zoomed into its children. And then we have this thing called the POV toolbar, which means that although quarter one is displaying the data just on row 2 and profit is the intersection of the data just in column B, product, market, and scenario here are describe all of the data in all of the rows and all of the columns. So this number, 24,703, is the intersection of quarter one, profit, total product, total market, and total scenario. And any other number is also the intersection of total product, total market, and total scenario. That's what POV, point of view, means. The advantages to SmartView: you've got the Excel interface that presumably you are familiar with. You've got a point of view that you can display in the toolbar, which I just showed you on the slide, or in the grid. You can integrate it with Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, copying in that live data I refer to. And besides the, quote, standard method of querying data within SmartView, which is the ad hoc method, which I'll show you in a moment, there are multiple other methods of querying the data, something called Smart Slices, Report Designer, Query Designer, Smart Query, and the inserting of functions via the function builder. And beyond that, you can go into SmartView and create a VBA macro that includes SmartView functions so that you can actually automate your SmartView reporting with those VBA macros and SmartView functions. So the basics of SmartView are: you're going to connect to a data source, you're going to do this command called ad hoc analysis, and then you're going to do your basic reporting and analysis commands of zooming in for more detail, zooming out for less detail, moving dimensions around by clicking and dragging, pivoting and transposing dimensions, keeping and removing only members from the grid. And when you connect to an Essbase database in SmartView in Excel, you get this Essbase ribbon, and really 50 or more % of the time you're going to use these first 5 commands, the basic commands. And let's take a look at that here. Let me go to my Excel spreadsheet here, and I've already connected to a database called Sample Basic here. And there you see that I have 5 dimensions in this database: year, measures, product, market, and scenario. And up here, product, market, and scenario, those dimensions happen to be my POV dimensions. And if I press this POV toggle, you'll notice that those POV dimensions moved over from the grid to this POV toolbar, and there's now a hidden row 1. If I press the POV toggle again, the POV members go back into the grid. So it's a matter of where you want to display those things. But I can do things like zoom in on year, zoom in on measures. I'll zoom in on market also. Market, notice, got moved over to this side. And then at this point I might decide, you know, I want my product and scenario in my POV, so I'll move it over to the POV toolbar to clear things up a little bit. And then I might decide, you know, I'd like to have my markets up on top instead of over on the side, so I can use my pivot command. I might decide I have too many things on display, and I might want to get rid of some members or keep some members and remove other members. So I'll select profit from my measures dimension and do a keep only. Notice all I've got is profit left. And if I zoom in on profit now, I've got margin, total expenses, and profit, which were the children of margin. I'll do another keep only on margin and then zoom in on margin. And now I've got sales, cost of goods sold, and margin. Let's say I don't want margin. I'll remove only on margin. Now all I've got from my measures dimension is sales and cost of goods sold. And I can do the same thing with my markets. Let's say I don't want the total market and I don't want the south market. I clicked on market, I control-clicked on south, and I do a remove only, and there I have that. There are many other things you can do. I mentioned clicking and dragging. Here I have an analysis of my markets by my sales and cost of goods sold. Maybe I'd rather have an analysis of my sales and cost of goods sold by market. So I do a little right-click and drag there. I've got the same data but a different analysis now. Now it's the sales east and west and central, and then the cost of goods sold east, west, and central, as opposed to the other way, east sales and COGS, west sales and COGS, central sales and COGS. Or I can move sales and COGS over to this side, and then I'm analyzing my sales and cost of goods sold by my quarters. I might rather do my quarters by my sales and cost of goods sold. I came close, but I didn't quite win on that, so I'm going to undo that. There's multiple levels of undo, and I'll once again fail. So I'm going to try it the other way. I'm going to right-click and drag my quarters outside of my sales and cost of goods sold. That worked much better, and now I have an analysis of my quarters by sales and cost of goods sold. But I forgot to get rid of year, so I'll go back to year here and do a remove only on it, and now it's out of the report. There are many other things I can do, like member selection. I can move individual items from the POV up to the grid or not, as I so desire, and zoom in on products and so forth. There's just a number of things that I can do, including making errors every once in a while. So beyond the basics that I just demonstrated for you, there are tons of options. Let me show you here. If I go to the Smart View ribbon and click on Options, you see I've got 6 categories of options, and I can do all kinds of things with options. Basically, options control how things look and how they work. I can do things like member selection. Let me show you another sample of that here. If I go to a member here and say Essbase member selection, instead of zooming in, zooming out, so forth and so on, to select the members I want, I can just expand an entire dimension and say, you know what, I'd really only like marketing and payroll in my report rather than sales and cost of goods sold, and I can add those things. I'm not going to do that. I don't have the report set up quite right. But member selection, I can do any number of things, including filtering members based upon their generation, their level, their UDA, if you've ever heard what a UDA is. Just multiple things you can do with member selection. And like I said, there are other tools that you can use to do reporting, like Smart Slices, Report Designer, Query Designer, Smart Query, and the insertion of functions. And yes, I can integrate it with Word and PowerPoint, copying live data, as I mentioned earlier. I'll give you a quick look at a Smart Slice. I'm going to recreate the report, start from the beginning here. And if I go over to my Smart View panel here and say, create new Smart Slice, and I want to use my default aliases, what a Smart Slice is a limited view of things. So I can specify exactly what I want the user to have access to by, there we go, that's the one I'm looking for, saying I only want the user to see marketing and payroll. So I'll go over there in my measures dimension. And I'll select for my year dimension that I only want the user to have access to, let's say, Q1 and Q2. And I could do the same thing with my POV dimensions. I can actually move dimensions from the POV to the rows and columns, vice versa. I can add attribute dimensions, if you know what those are, very simply and easily. I can specify different options that apply to this Smart Slice, but when I'm done, I end up with a Smart Slice after I select my point of view members. I'm not going to make any changes there. I give a name to the Smart Slice, and all of a sudden you see underneath Sample Basic there's this thing called a Smart Slice. So if I go to another sheet here, I'm going to go to sheet 2 and right-click on it and do an ad hoc analysis, there's my Smart Slice. Now notice that the user can't zoom into quarter 1 because I said they're limited to quarter 1 and quarter 2. They can't zoom out to the year because they're limited to quarter 1 and quarter 2. This isn't a fantastic example of a Smart Slice, but just to give you an idea of it. And besides that, I can take a Smart Slice and what they say here, you can't quite read it, I'll slide over to the right, insert a Smart Slice into a report. And all of a sudden this thing called the Report Designer opened down here. And I'm going to go to another sheet, sheet 3 there, and start creating a report with this Report Designer from the Smart Slice I created. I'll insert something called a function grid there, I'll insert something called a table there, and I'll insert something called a chart here. And now when I press refresh, going to my Smart View menu and pressing refresh, you see a chart based upon the Smart Slice. You see a function grid, which is nothing but a bunch of function points in that function grid, and you see a movable and sizable table. I'll give you an example of moving and sizing the table. I press this little button over here, which allows me to move and size the table as I so desire. So I'll move it over here and uncheck that button, and now you see that my table is over here. And if I made my table too small for the amount of data in there, I'd actually have scroll bars. And then I can also, in here, decide that I want to insert a POV, just like you saw the POV on the regular Smart View report. So if I go in here to the POV and decide I want those 3 states represented in my point of view, I can go, and now I've selected New Hampshire, and when I press refresh, you should see the data change here, here, and the table change. So I can go to Oregon, refresh, and the data changes in all 3 areas. So that's my quick overview of what a Smart Slice is and how to use the Report Designer, just to give you an idea. Every tool has its advantages and disadvantages, and if you want to call these disadvantages, feel free to do so. You have to know Excel in order to use Smart View. It's not innately visual, but you can use the Smart Slice and the Report Designer as I showed you. Really, with all of these tools, you need to have a knowledge of the dimensional model. What dimensions are there? What are the hierarchies of the dimensions? What are the members within the dimensions? What are the properties of those members? Because they can affect what you see. Are there anything called attribute dimensions or UDAs, user-defined attributes? And the whole security aspect of accessing different parts of the database is handled in a different area, and you'd have to learn that if you're the administrator, but only if you're the administrator. But these reports can be distributed via Workspace also, so that's really an advantage. Now, I just gave you a quick overview. I do want you to know that there is a one-day full Smart View course which goes over all those things in detail. There's a half-day basic course, a half-day advanced course that can be delivered live or via the internet. The live delivery can happen at your site or one of our HCG education locations in Minneapolis or Phoenix. We do have some video training available in the Smart View arena, and there is also a 2-day class on something I just spoke about but didn't show you, Smart View automation, where you learn about VBA macros and Smart View functions. But that brings us to web analysis. Web analysis. A web-based studio for reporting, analysis, and presentation. Really more for presentation than reporting and analysis, although it can be used for that. An easy-to-use graphical user interface, okay, that's probably true. But it's better suited for more visual displays of data. Not only can you view a spreadsheet, you can view a chart, a pinboard, a freeform grid. Actually, essentially the same things except a pinboard that you could do with the Report Designer. But it also allows for the easy insertion of controls that allow people to make choices from combo boxes, option buttons, check boxes, tab selections. So yes, it's used for analysis, presentation, and reporting, and it can be distributed via print, HTML web pages, PDF, and online viewing in the workspace. Key features and advantages. Yes, it's interactive analysis, as I'll show you. Yes, the interface is context-driven, as most interfaces are these days. Yes, there are powerful point-and-click analytic features. I'll display a little bit of that. There's a variety of displays. That's one of its key points. Fast and easy deployment. Okay, I'll go along with that. You can click on a data cell and then launch related content. Go from one web analysis document to another, or open up a PowerPoint presentation from this data point, so forth and so on. You can access Essbase and SAP Business Warehouse, and it does integrate with Workspace for viewing distribution and a little bit of analysis in Workspace. What does web analysis look like? Well, here's a report with what's called a freeform grid here, a pinboard here, a chart here, an image there, and I'll show you some other things. Oh, and controls here. The user can click on population, small, medium, large, or the total population, and the whole pinboard would change. But let's take a look at it live here. I'm going to go down, and actually I'm going to go back up here and exit out of Excel, and then come back into web analysis here. So here I am in web analysis, and I've already opened some web analysis documents where here's an image, and here are actually some controls where I can click on this hyperlink essentially and go from the product sales report that I'm in to the product profitability report automatically via that link, except for that minor error there. So pretend you didn't see that. There's a chart on this one. Let's take a look at product profitability here. Here's an example of essentially a spreadsheet, but with the use of traffic lighting. So numbers above a certain level are red, between us yellow, above a certain level are green, below a certain level are red, and in between are yellow, something like that. Traffic lighting by specifying different points at which the colors change. And the traffic lighting then can be integrated with things like pin boards, where you see the green, yellow pins here on the pin board, which are directly related to the traffic lighting that I was just talking about. These reports can be very dynamic also. This is essentially the same report I was looking at, but now if I double click on the West here, notice how it brings me into just the western states with another pin board with a pin for each state in the West, showing me whether it's doing very well or medium. Nothing's doing very poorly. None of the states are doing very poorly at this point in time. And I can switch from analyzing the caffeinated beverages as opposed to the decaffeinated beverages. I guess the decaffeinated beverages are doing quite well in the western states. Things like that. But I can also use it for just analysis myself. Here I double-clicked on a database, and very similar to SmartView, I can double-click on things to do a zoom in, and I can double-click on measures to zoom in, and I can press this button to decide which dimensions are going to appear in the rows, columns, or pages there. So I've selected market to go over to my rows, and I select a couple of markets, click on OK. I selected, let's say, scenario to appear in my pages. I've got actual and budget there. I click on OK, and now I've got a report with multiple pages in it. Page 1 is actual, page 2 is budget, and the numbers change. And I can do things like you saw me do with SmartView, where I had my markets to the inside of my quarters. Now I've got my markets to the outside of my quarters. And then I'll bring my quarters back to the outside of the markets. Or I can bring my markets up here to the columns. And the measures moved over to the rows. Many ad hoc things like that. Besides that, I can do all kinds of formatting. I can do formatting of the header font, the data font, or the actual data within that row or column, or sets of rows and columns. I can right-click and do spreadsheet options, which essentially is more formatting of the display, the headers, and the data. I can do things like different analysis tools where I can say, let's do something simple. I'm going to add a calculation here where I want east added to west. And I'll type in a bogus title there, click on OK, and now I have a newly calculated column of east plus west equals 12,517. Things like that. I'm just speaking in an ad hoc fashion here. We'll see what we've got coming up. There are various web analysis objects, as they're called. And you've seen a spreadsheet. You saw a freeform grid in one of those documents I showed you earlier. You've seen a chart, you've seen a pinboard, and there are various other things that you can add to a web analysis document. When I create a web analysis document just by itself, I can view it in the spreadsheet mode, or I can decide I want to view it in a bar chart, or I want to view it in a line chart, etc., very simply and easily from here. Or I can view it in a pinboard, but in order to do a pinboard, then I have to have traffic lighting on my spreadsheet itself, and I can easily add traffic lighting by doing something like this, analysis traffic lighting. I'm not going to go through the process of it, where I can specify certain things are green, yellow, or red. I can change the colors. I can add more points. Instead of just having 3 points here, I can have more points than that. All kinds of things I can do there. There's also, if I go here to File, New Document here, once I do that, now I'm in the real building tool where I can add things like a label, a text area, an image, an HTML browser area where I can have a website right on the document. I can add a chart, a spreadsheet, a freeform grid, a pinboard, and I can add all these controls like a radio button, a checkbox, tab groups, so forth and so on, that allows me to build those fancy reports that you saw earlier. So there are some basic analytics like keep only, remove only, the same as I had in SmartView, drilling up, drilling down. I can go into the data source area, moving dimensions to rows, columns, and pages, as you saw me do earlier. I did some pivoting and transposing on the fly. I didn't show you keep and remove only, but it's really pretty easy. I can do, via my analysis tools, things like traffic lighting, sorting by data, sorting by name. I can specify that I only want the top 5, the bottom 10 in my report. I can add a calculated field. You saw me do that rather quickly. And there's lots of areas in which I can do formatting to make it look nice. I can format the entire spreadsheet, its display, its headers, and its data, or I can just work on certain rows and columns, specifying a header font for those rows and columns, a data font, or a data format like positive, negative, dollar signs, those kinds of things. Or I can go to the cellular level and actually format each individual cell differently, should I like to do so. As you saw, when I display a document, I can display it in its standard grid format, or as a chart, or as a pinboard. I can actually do a combination of a grid and a chart quite easily, but I have to go through something called a document wizard. It's very simple, easy to use. But the real powerful tool is the document designer, where I can now add any object wherever I want, put it wherever I want, add data controls, add these things called service execution buttons. So I could put a button right on my report that when they press that button, it automatically opens the calculator. And that's just a simple example of it. For the distribution of those documents, then I can print them, either the entire thing or specific objects. I can export them to Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. I can export them to local or network drives. And I can exchange documents with shared services, but that's far more complicated than we want to get to. The disadvantages of web analysis are that it's mainly for visual output, not really for production printed reporting. It has weaker printing capabilities and, generally speaking, slower performance than SmartView within Excel. And as far as the training available there, we do have a 2-day web analysis course delivered live or via the internet. And again, if it's live delivery at your site or one of our 2 locations. That brings us to the third item, financial reporting. Let me go back here for a moment, and I'm going to get rid of web analysis here. I don't want to save any of those items that I've changed. And here I'm actually in Workspace. Hopefully some of you have been in Workspace already. But it's a general repository for multiple items like financial reporting reports, web analysis documents, Excel workbooks, and so forth and so on. It's a very powerful tool that I'm not going to really be discussing here. But let me go over now, let me close this one too, to financial reporting. And in financial reporting, I have essentially the same repository that you saw in Workspace where I can get at things or create things from here. And I'm going to go to a previously created financial reporting report called All Objects and open it up in my Financial Reporting Studio. Notice that Financial Reporting Studio is not a web-based tool, but is a separate application. And in this application, I can create grids, I can create charts, I can create text items, I can create images, so forth and so on like that. Now you're seeing it in the building tool, which doesn't look too good. Let me go back here for a moment. What's the whole point of it? You want to create reports that are book quality, for compliance reporting, those kinds of things, quarterly reports, annually reports. And you can graphically design them with the charts. And you have report objects, the grid, the chart, the image, and the text boxes. And they are integrated with Workspace so that you can view them from Workspace, and then you can combine multiple reports into what is called a book. And then all those multiple reports and books, you can batch the distribution of those reports and books to output to many different areas, many different people at the same time. So the basic objects involved in creating a financial reporting report are an image. There's my image, the globe. Here's a text object, the Worldwide Trading Company. The text object can contain not only static text like you see here, but much more importantly, functions that retrieve dynamic values at the time the report is run. Here's an example of the grid object that you can put into a report, and you can format that in multiple ways, and an example of a chart object, and there are multiple different charts, not just bar charts, that you can insert. So in Financial Reporting Studio, you create the report by adding objects like grids, charts, images, and text objects. And then you can customize those objects, and there's where the devil in the details lies, because each object has a property sheet with multiple properties in which you can do many, many things to not only make it look good, but also to do things for you, like launching separate content from that object that you're in. And then in Workspace, you're going to administer the folders and reports that contain the financial reporting reports. You're going to create books. You're going to batch the distribution of those books and those reports. A grid is just like a spreadsheet. It has rows, columns, pages, and points of view. You can suppress data just like you can in SmartView. Suppress the rows that contain nothing but missing or nothing but zero. Every object, the grid object rather, has pages, row headings, and column headings in which you select the exact dimension members you want, specify how the heading label is going to look, format it. You can add automatic calculations, give me a total of this column or this row, give me an average of this column, set of columns or rows. Besides that, you can create very complex formulas, but auto calculations are an easy way of getting simple calculations into your report. The individual data cells within the grid can be also formatted and have related content added to them so that you can click on the hyperlink associated with that data cell to launch other content. The rows and columns, you can format them very precisely, and you can actually have a content formatting that's based on conditions, so conditional formatting. And the rows and columns that you have will either contain data or possibly formulas, or they contain text. And as a matter of fact, text rows and columns are often inserted with nothing but blanks in them just to make your grid look nicer. You can create charts from a grid, and you can select one of, I believe, 4 different charts. And the chart contents is based on what's in the grid. And you can format the chart extensively. You can add text objects with static text, or much more importantly, the dynamic text functions that extract information about the report from the report. So here's that all objects report, but I'm going to show it to you in more detail. So when you're building it, you build a grid, you build a chart, you build a text object, you build an image object. And right now we're looking at it in the financial reporting tool, the creation tool. And you're going, well, yeah, but what does it really look like? Well, we can press the print preview button here, which will display it, in my case, in Adobe Reader. And now I can see that page 1 is my profit data, page 2 is my margin data, page 3 is my sales, and page 4 is my cost of goods sold data, which I can see here. It says pages include profit, margin, sales, and cost of goods sold. Notice that row 1 here says Children of East. What does that really mean? Not only did I get East, but I got all of its children, including New York, Massachusetts, Florida, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. The chart, it was actually built, the data in the chart was actually extracted from row 2, as you see there, row 5, row 8, and row 11, East, West, South, and Central. So when I display the chart, you see that I get East, West, South, and Central data in the bars of the chart. And then it's extracting the data from March and the quarter to date for March, column A and column B here. Column A says the current point of view for the year, which happens to be March, and the quarter to date as of the current point of view, which is also March. So ultimately, what does the end user see? Well, the end user has to go into Workspace and find Essbase samples there and all objects, and when they double click on it, they see it in an HTML format here. And you notice that I'm going to switch back between financial reporting and Workspace quite often here. Notice here it says year March product colas scenario actual. Those are my points of view. And I can, as the end user, I can say, well, you know what, I don't want to see March, I want to see April instead. So I click on April, and now it says April there, and I'm seeing April data and quarter to date through April. And instead of colas, I want to see a different product, root beer, let's say. So now I'm seeing root beer, so forth and so on. And if you notice, each time I changed my point of view, it also changed it in the title here. Now it says April root beer instead of March and colas that it did before. Why? Because the text object said, get the member name of the year dimension from grid 1. Get the member alias of the product dimension from grid 1, so forth and so on. Those are called functions, which return the actual member value at that time. I see that somebody has a question. Let me see if I can actually look at it here. Oh, it just had a raised hand. Sorry. I'll ignore that then for now. If you have a question, feel free to type it in, and I'll have time for questions later, or you can contact me via phone or email. So this original report that you created then looks like this in the print preview mode, so that you can see what it would look like to the user. The text function output is displayed, point of view, colas, and actual. It's a little truncated there, sorry about that. And I can display the multiple pages with my up and down buttons or my previous and next buttons. But the end user is going to go into Workspace, And they're going to see for the point of view that they can change the point of view, that they can change the pages. I'll go back here to my workspace and change it from a profit point of view to a margin point of view. And the numbers change, the chart changes to the sales point of page rather. So my New York sales in April are 630, but my New York margin is 266, and it happens so fast, but trust me, the bars in the chart are changing also. So the user can change the point of view, the user can change the pages, the user sees the text function output in the report. So as they change the point of view, that text function for COLAs and actual will also change. And you're going to use that workspace to view the report either in HTML as you saw me do it, because HTML gives us those hyperlinks that we can click on, or you can view it in PDF format if you want. You can collect multiple reports into a book for easy access purposes, and then you can distribute those multiple reports or books via what is called a batch process. And the reason why you want a batch process is to make life easier for you, because you're going to send out those same reports monthly, weekly, quarterly, whatever, and those reports will automatically change because you've created them so well that it will automatically update from this month to next month, this quarter to next quarter. And should you need to reschedule a batch, it's available for you to reschedule on a manual basis also. So the advantages are, yes, you can have highly formatted reports. You can have a wide variety of formats, charts, grids, so forth. You can launch related content from the report. The report can be, I didn't mention this before, dynamic or static. Most reports are going to be dynamic, but if you want a snapshot in time, a historical snapshot in time, you can create a static report so that anytime somebody opens that report, it will be the data displayed and created on that day. What, if any, well, that's quite a question. What, if any, differences are there in Financial Reporting 9.3 and the 11.x version? And my answer is probably not that much, but I really haven't done a significant analysis. But I don't think there's a whole lot of difference. In Workspace, you can view the reports. In Workspace, you can distribute the reports. And you can be notified via email whether that distribution of the batch was successful or not successful. But financial reporting does have a learning curve. All of these do. There is a quite limited ad hoc analysis capabilities as opposed to web analysis and especially SmartView, which have more ad hoc analyzing capabilities. And you can't access any relational data sources like SmartView can access HFM, which is relational. And of course, we have training available there too. There's a 2-day financial reporting course, live or internet, live delivery at your site or in Minneapolis or Phoenix. So that was about a 45-minute webinar. I'm sure you're ready to get back to work, or maybe you're ready to start using one of these 3 tools. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to contact me. My name is Craig Messenbring. There's my email address. There is my direct phone number. Get me right away. Or contact HCG in general via the phone number, the website, LinkedIn, YouTube. Who knows, there might be a Twitter out there also. But anyway, I hope you had a great day today and enjoyed the webinar and got something from it, and hope to see you again sometime. Feel free to pop up a question just like somebody did here. Oh, it looks like it's the same question. I'm trying to make this bigger so that I can see it more easily here. If my POV was a department in financial reporting, how would I produce and distribute the reports to all the department managers? In one click, can this be done? The answer is yes. How you do it, there's a number of steps in the creation of either a book you can create multiple reports by selecting multiple POV members, or you can, in a batch, specify multiple POV members to create multiple reports from that one report. It's a relatively simple process once you get to that point within either of those processes of creating a book or creating a batch. But I'd have to explain it in more detail than I can verbally. But great question. So that's it for the questions here. I'll leave my contact information on display and close the webinar, the audio portion of this webinar now. Thanks for attending.